Chapter 8, looking at Germany. But perhaps even more importantly than just looking at Germany, this chapter is calling into question methods used by political scientists everywhere to see if we're doing it right. Are we specifying our models properly? Because political science does borrow our methodology, econometrics, from economists, from a different school of academia. So it's important every so often we reevaluate how we're using quantitative analysis and if we're doing it properly. The author in this chapter is really trying to say you cannot cut and paste methods and expect they're just going to work. And I think they do a really good job of illustrating this by saying our first two hypotheses. One, that internet use can lead to increased political engagement. Okay, that's what we've been looking at. Or, does increased political engagement lead to increased internet use? Why would you look at that? That makes no sense at all. Why would being more politically engaged lead to more internet use? Theoretically, it shouldn't. But if you produce a model that says it does, that means your variables suffer from endogeneity. That there are correlations between the two and the effects go back and forth. And if that is the case, you have a major issue with being able to pull real-world implications from your models. One way we go in political science about making sure our quantitative analysis is quality is by making sure our theory is sound going into it. So we bring up, why should the internet affect politics in the way that it does? And in this chapter we have the internet effect hypothesis, which there are three major components to it, meaning causal mechanisms that cause internet use to lead to more political engagement. The first one is free byproduct learning. We've talked about byproduct learning before. The simple fact that if you're online, you could be accidentally exposed to political information that can pique your interest and lead to increased political engagement. The second two, though, we really haven't talked about as much. The fact that seeking political information online is really cheap. Now, what does that mean? It means you have a reduced cost to find political information. Before the internet, it was a little more difficult to find out candidate stances, party stances, what was going on online, what was going on in politics. But with the internet, like that. So you reduce the amount of cost you incur to gather political information. And the third point's the same, reduced cost for political activity. It is far easier to sign a petition online from home than it is to actually find a petition in the real world and sign that. And any forms of political engagement, if you go from offline to online, online is cheaper as far as the cost you incur to participate. So because of free byproduct learning, because of a reduced cost to seeking political information, and because of a reduced cost to political activity, these reasons are why the internet should affect political engagement by increasing it. Internet effect hypothesis. But now, let's see how it works when we flip the tables on what we normally think is the causal relationship between our two major variables. So we already know, of course, the authors found support that increased internet use leads to increased political engagement. No surprise there. All right, Germany and their democracy works very similar to other democratic countries we've looked at. But let's think about what the authors find when they look at how political engagement affects internet use. And more specifically, some of the major variables that lead to political engagement. Variables like education, income. We know those two factors, socioeconomic factors. The higher they go, the more likely you are to be politically engaged. We've talked about that a lot. Now let's see how those things affect internet use. And we have at least two very interesting findings. First one, the odds of acquiring internet access are 72% higher for a university graduate than someone with a primary education. 72% higher for a college graduate than someone with a primary education. That means if you have a college education, you are 72% more likely and will acquire internet access faster than someone who only has a primary education. That's pretty big. That is a big difference because of education. What about income? It is 44% higher for those in the upper one-third income brackets than the lower one-third income brackets. 44% higher and faster for getting internet access. Put these two things together, they say the digital divide is real. They're saying internet access is inhibited by your level of education and your level of income, even in Germany. That's pretty big. But it also has major implications for how we think about political engagement and internet work together. Now, the moment of truth that we've all been waiting for, or maybe you haven't been, but really, are our methods good? What do we find as far as political engagement as an independent variable affecting internet use as a dependent variable? So we're flipping our theory on its head and testing it. And the results? Not that good, but important. First off, we find that how politically engaged you are does affect your time until having internet access. For someone who has a party attachment, they're going to have access to the internet 11% faster than those who do not. For someone who's interested in politics, they will have access to the internet 11% faster than someone who's not interested in politics. For someone who is politically active, they will have access to the internet 15% faster than those who are not politically active. This isn't good. I mean, it's good that we are seeing this. It's good that we're testing our theories, testing them for endogeneity. Political variables like this, theoretically, should not be affecting time to internet access, mathematically speaking. Not for our regression analysis to work properly. The implications, the author says, is a lot of previous research, their results are biased because they are not controlling for endogeneity in their models. And there are ways you can do this, but this isn't a methods class. It's only a 3000 level class, so we're not going to go into how you specify your models to check for endogeneity, but you can. But the authors say a lot of previous research does not. And this is a problem. What's more, the authors bring up something that we haven't talked about yet. The fact that the internet may simply just be increasing the political knowledge gap. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So what is the political knowledge gap? The political knowledge gap is nothing new, first off. The political knowledge gap is the gap of political information between people who are politically minded and those who are not. Now, the author suggests the internet may be increasing the size of that gap. And if you look on the slide, you'll see this diagram that I made in Microsoft Paint, but I think it came out really well. So internet use is increasing political knowledge for everyone. Okay, but you still have two different lines, those who are politically informed and engaged, those who are not. So the internet effect hypothesis, even those who aren't interested in politics, because of byproduct learning, and reduced cost, over time, those people, as you can see at the bottom line, they're increasing their political knowledge. However, for those who are politically inclined, you'll notice the slope of their line is much higher, meaning they are gaining more political knowledge faster in comparison to those other people who are just byproduct learners. So everyone is increasing their political knowledge. However, because the slope is different for our top line, what happens is that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, what are the implications behind it? Well, if people are all learning, regardless of the rate at which they learn, what happens to people when they learn things? What happens when people get smarter? They start to be more sure of themselves. They start to have more confidence in their beliefs. And what happens when people are more and more confident about their beliefs? They are less likely to be tolerant of other people's beliefs. Keep that in mind. That's really important for us. Now, that age-old question that we ask every single time: does this research matter? Well, 5 points. The research only matters if you think political engagement is important. Well, if you're in a democracy, which is predicated on the idea that people have to participate in order for it to work, then yes, political engagement, this research, very important. Does political knowledge matter? Once again, if you're in a democracy based off of people's votes, the quality of it is based on voters having good knowledge. So check, yes, this research matters because political knowledge does matter for the quality of your democracy. Does the political knowledge gap matter? And does population polarization matter? Because one of the implications of the political knowledge gap, as that gap increases, everyone is still getting smarter. People are starting to become more sure of their own beliefs. The implications, the 2 sides, the 3 sides, the 4 sides, however many political parties you have in your system, will be less likely to work together. People will become more extreme in their voting. And you can have more gridlock in your political system. Does gridlock matter? In a democracy, yes. Because gridlock hinders political efficiency, government efficiency at producing legislation to increase the quality of life in a country. So, all in all, does the quality of your democracy matter? If the answer is yes, and if you want your country to get better, then this research definitely draws attention to some things that can hurt and some things that can help the quality of life of your political system.